You think power makes you untouchable? I make power suffer.
Iron Man had never faced a being like this before. He studied Superman, not just his powers, but his flaws. And what he found could bring even a god to his knees. The Avengers warned him, don't go too far. But Tony had already made up his mind. In his vault, he built a weapon not of destruction, but of revelation. Superman thought he was invincible, until Stark whispered a single word, kryptonite. The world had changed since Superman arrived. Wars ended in hours. Dictators vanished overnight. Natural disasters met with godlike resistance. Humanity should have felt safe, protected. But not everyone was convinced. Tony Stark wasn't. He watched from a tower, arms folded, brow tight, as news feeds looped the same footage. Superman hovering above a collapsed bridge, holding up the entire structure like it was nothing, smiling while civilians cheered below. It wasn't the strength that bothered Stark. It was the smile, the kind of calm confidence only someone invincible could wear. For weeks, Stark stayed quiet. No statements, no press comments. But in the quiet corners of his lab, he was building something. Not armor, not weapons. Something else. Something far more dangerous. Understanding. He began with the public records. Then the satellite feeds. Then he pulled strings to dig into black market files from LexCorp. Files that had vanished after Luthor's last takedown. Files marked K1. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. Superman wasn't just powerful. He was alien, literal, a Kryptonian. And like any species, he had limits. He had to. Tony's AI scraped every available signal from Superman's public appearances. Heart rate, thermal emissions, radiation traces, acoustic anomalies. The data was overwhelming until something clicked. There were spikes, always near a greenish mineral. Rare, radioactive, crystalline, not from Earth. Tony stared at the word for the first time. Not in myth, not in fear. Just fact. Kryptonite. No one else on the Avengers team knew. Not yet. This wasn't about the team. This was about Tony and the one man on Earth, no above Earth, who could kill them all before breakfast and sleep like a baby afterward. The files from LexCorp were unstable, incomplete. Stark had to rebuild most of the science himself. But within weeks, his lab bore fruit. Not a weapon, a detector. Small, portable, undetectable. It could scan for Kryptonian biometrics and identify stress responses from proximity to the mineral. So he tested it, discreetly. Superman was predictable, always at the disaster, always first on the scene. All Tony had to do was be there too. One day, it was a collapsing dam. Another, a rogue AI that infected a city grid. Stark made sure he showed up, just late enough to be irrelevant, but close enough to scan. Every time Superman was near a certain signature, the one matching the recovered LexCorp mineral, he grew tense. Muscles tightened microscopically. A tremor in his left hand. A microscopic change in breathing. Tony saw what no one else could. Superman was vulnerable. Not weak. Just not invincible. That changed everything. Stark wasn't afraid. He respected power. But what terrified him was how blindly everyone trusted it. The world had given Superman a crown without asking who he answered to. What would happen if he ever stopped choosing to be good? And what if he didn't even realize it? Tony had been a god once, in his own way. He knew how easy it was to cross the line and not even feel the bump. The final straw came on a Tuesday. A covert shield mission in Bosnia had gone south. Classified operation. No press. No cameras. But Superman still showed up. Neutralized the target. Flew off. No questions asked. Tony was furious. Who gave him that intel? Who told him it was okay to interfere? The team barely survived because Superman didn't wait for context. Just charged in and decided what he thought was justice. Captain America told Stark to let it go. Clark means well. Banner tried to mediate. He's not our enemy. Natasha reminded him, we've dealt with worse. But Tony wasn't listening anymore. It wasn't about intent. It was about power. And unchecked power always corrupts. He began building again. Not an armor upgrade, not missiles. Something smaller, focused, a failsafe. Something designed not to destroy Superman, just to level the field. The mineral was nearly impossible to synthesize, but Stark found a way to mimic its radiation. He embedded the emitter into his palm reactor. Hidden, passive, tuned only to activate if Superman's vitals ever passed a certain threshold. He called it Protocol Eclipse. No one else knew. He couldn't tell them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But in his mind, it wasn't betrayal. It was insurance. A contingency. The same way he had one for Hulk. The same way Batman probably had one for all of them. You don't plan for today's heroes. You plan for tomorrow's mistakes. Superman, for all his glory, had no one watching him. No leash. No counter. No equal. Until now. Tony didn't hate Superman. In fact, a part of him admired the guy. The Boy Scout charm, the real compassion. But that wasn't the point. The point was simple. If you're the one man everyone trusts to save the world, then someone needs to be ready if you're the one they need saving from. And Tony Stark just made sure he'd be ready. The first sign that something was wrong wasn't a fight. It was silence. Superman stopped talking to the Avengers. No briefings. No coordination. He still showed up to crises, still saved lives, still smiled for cameras. But when Stark tried to loop him into joint operations, the messages went unanswered. When Natasha asked for intel on a rogue alien cell, Clark responded with a single line, already handled. Handle how? No one knew. Tony noticed the pattern before anyone else did. Superman was moving faster, acting alone, trusting his instincts over collaboration. He wasn't hostile, just distant, like someone who believed they no longer needed permission. That worried Stark more than open aggression ever could. Meanwhile, the world loved it. Crime dropped. Wars froze. World leaders hesitated before pushing buttons they once slammed without thought. Superman became more than a hero. He became a deterrent, a living threat hanging silently over every bad decision. Tony watched approval ratings soar and felt his stomach twist. Because power fed on praise. Then came Prague. An underground weapons exchange triggered a citywide blackout. Avengers were already en route when Superman arrived first. Witnesses later said he tore through the compound in seconds. Walls folded. Armed men were restrained, some unconscious, some terrified. But when the Avengers landed, the scene felt wrong. The suspects weren't just neutralized. They were broken, bones shattered, trauma severe. Not lethal, but close enough that doctors questioned intent. Cap confronted Superman immediately, asked why he didn't wait. Clark's response was calm, too calm. They were going to detonate a device, he said. I prevented that. Tony asked for proof. Superman hesitated just a fraction of a second, then replied, I don't need permission to stop people from dying. That was the moment Stark knew. Not that Superman was evil, not that he was lying, but that he had crossed an invisible line. One Tony had crossed himself years ago. The line where you decide the outcome is justified because you can see further than everyone else. Back at the tower, Tony ran the Prague data through his system. Satellite feeds, energy readings, biometrics. Superman's vitals spiked again. Same signature. Kryptonite-adjacent radiation had been present in the area. Trace amounts embedded in the device the criminals were transporting. Enough to irritate. Enough to stress. Enough to make Superman angry. That changed the equation. Tony realized Superman didn't just have a weakness. He had a trigger. Exposure didn't just weaken him physically. It destabilized him emotionally. Heightened aggression. Reduced restraint. That was dangerous because it meant the one thing that could stop Superman could also push him too far. The Avengers argued for hours. Steve insisted Clark was still one of them. Banner worried about escalation. Thor trusted Superman's honor. Natasha stayed quiet, which worried Tony even more. No one wanted to be the first to say it out loud. What if Superman couldn't always control himself? Tony didn't wait for consensus. He upgraded Protocol Eclipse. The emitter was refined, tuned to release pulses instead of a constant field. Short bursts, non-lethal, enough to disrupt Kryptonian muscle coordination without causing permanent damage. He tested it on simulations, on alien tech, on himself, pushing his nervous system to the brink just to understand the effects. He didn't enjoy it. This wasn't about winning. It was about containment. Then Superman made his move. Without warning, he intercepted a Wakandan convoy transporting vibranium prototypes. Classified. Authorized. The reason? Superman believed the weapons would destabilize global security. Wakanda did not agree. Neither did the Avengers. The political fallout was immediate. T'Challa demanded accountability. Governments panicked. The media split between praise and outrage. Superman stood firm. These weapons would have killed millions, he said publicly. I acted. Tony watched the broadcast in silence. No hesitation, no apology, no acknowledgement of sovereignty, just certainty. That night, Stark activated the Avengers Emergency Protocol. Full team meeting. No press. No recordings. When Superman arrived, floating calmly into the room like he owned the space, the tension was unbearable. Tony didn't waste time. You don't get to decide that alone, he said. Superman looked at him, not angry, not defensive, just disappointed. I thought you'd understand, Clark replied. You more than anyone. And that hurt more than Stark expected, because part of him did understand. But understanding wasn't agreement. You're not wrong every time, Tony said. But you don't get to be right all the time. That's not how this works. Superman stepped closer. People are alive because I didn't wait. Tony met his gaze. And people are scared because you didn't ask. The room fractured. Voices rose. Accusations flew. Thor warned of pride. Natasha questioned motives. Cap stood between them, literally and figuratively, trying to hold the line. Superman listened, then shook his head. You're afraid of what I could become, he said quietly. I get that. But fear isn't a reason to change someone who's trying to help. He turned to leave. Tony watched him go, heart pounding, and for the first time he felt it. Fear, not of Superman's strength, of his certainty. That night, Protocol Eclipse went from contingency to necessity, because Superman had made it clear he wasn't waiting anymore. And Tony Stark was running out of time to decide whether stopping a god before he fell made him a villain, or the only one brave enough to do what no one else would. Tony Stark didn't sleep after the meeting. Not really. He lay in the lab, staring at glowing blue schematics that pulsed with synthetic kryptonite signatures. Each design was a decision, each wire a moral compromise. This was the line, and he was about to cross it, not out of ego, not out of fear, but because someone had to. Superman had already shown the world he would act without consensus, and no one could stop him. No one even wanted to. Not officially, not politically. But Tony wasn't acting for the world. He was acting for the next moment, the one no one saw coming. So he built. It wasn't a suit. It was a trap, a field generator embedded in his reactor, enhanced by nanites that could spread into the environment and mimic the radioactive frequency of kryptonite for 60 seconds, enough to disorient, enough to disable. He called it the Phantom Pulse. It wouldn't kill Superman, but it would stop him long enough for someone else to make the next move, if there was one left to make. And then, Tony did the one thing he knew would draw Clark out. He planned a summit, a private gathering of enhanced individuals, world leaders, and key figures from S.H.I.E.L.D., Wakanda, and Kamartaj. No press, no exposure, just quiet control. And he sent the invitation directly to Clark. It wasn't bait, not completely. He wanted a conversation, but he also knew Superman wouldn't refuse. He couldn't. That's the thing about people who believe in their own righteousness. They always show up. When Superman arrived, he didn't fly in. He walked. Calm. Civil. Wearing a suit, not a cape. He smiled. He shook hands. He played the part perfectly. But Tony saw it. The twitch. The scan. The way Clark's eyes flicked around the room, faster than any human could follow. cataloging exits, energy signatures, potential threats. This wasn't a guest. This was a soldier. Tony didn't show it, but he tightened his palm, arming the generator silently. Dinner was smooth, polite. Discussions about ethics, about alliances, about accountability. Superman made good points. So did Cap. So did Chala. But the room split again. The unspoken question burned in the air. What if Superman decides we're the problem? Tony stood up. He didn't make a speech. He didn't raise his voice. He just asked a question no one else would say out loud. If it ever came to it, who here could stop him? Silence. Clark looked up. Is that what this is about? He said. You built a dinner party to ask if I need a leash? No, Tony said. I built it to see who's brave enough to admit we're afraid. Clark didn't flinch. Then let me ease your fears, he said. I'm not your enemy. Tony's voice didn't waver. Not yet. The room tensed. Every eye watched them now, Iron Man versus Superman, but without armor or heat vision. Just two men, one forged in war, the other born of stars. And then the alarms went off. An explosion rocked the edge of the facility. Vibranium containment breach. Emergency lockdowns failed. Chaos erupted, and no one moved faster than Superman. In an instant, he was gone, flying toward the breach, just like Tony planned. Because the explosion wasn't real. The energy surge was artificial. A control test, one designed to mimic a vibranium meltdown without actual danger. Tony followed behind, slowly, calm. He activated the phantom pulse as he walked, the nanites blooming invisibly into the air like a scent only Clark would recognize too late. When Superman arrived at the source, there was nothing but a silent chamber, empty. No reactor, no threat, just one glowing light in the center of the floor. Green. Clark froze. His breath caught. His heartbeat jumped. The air shifted. He turned, and Tony was already there. This was a test, Clark said. Voice strained, eyes sharp. Tony nodded. So was Prague. So was the convoy. So was Bosnia. Clark's jaw clenched. You think I've lost control. I think you've never been tested, and you don't know what happens when you are. Clark took a step forward, then staggered. Just slightly. Enough. The pulse was working. Tony didn't raise a weapon. He didn't strike. He just watched. I'm not your enemy, he said softly. Clark's eyes glowed red. And this isn't a betrayal, he asked. It's a boundary, Tony said, and someone needed to draw it. The air crackled. For one terrifying second, the god in the room didn't look like Clark Kent anymore. He looked like something older, something faster, something with heat in its eyes and fury in its heart. But then it faded. The glow vanished. Superman straightened. He looked down at his hands, then at Tony, and he understood. Not just the trap, but the reason. You built this in case I fell, he said. Tony shook his head. I built it in case you don't realize when you do. Silence again. Not fear, not anger. Something colder. Acceptance. Clark turned without a word and walked out. No threat. No promises. Just distance. And Tony stood in the chamber, surrounded by fading green light, knowing he hadn't won anything. He'd just changed the game. Because now Superman knew Stark had a failsafe. Knew he wasn't untouchable. Knew that trust, once cracked, doesn't repair, it shifts. And whatever happened next, the world had taken its first step into a future where the man from Krypton no longer flew alone. It happened 2 weeks later. No warning, no explosion, no alien invasion, no world-ending threat, just a ripple in the sky. And then Superman landed, right in front of Stark Tower. Not crashing, not blazing with heat vision. He landed, on the rooftop, silent, not in anger, not in peace, just waiting. Tony saw it from the cameras first. The symbol, the posture, the stillness. He didn't need a voice analysis to know what this was. A line had been crossed, and now it was time to answer for it. He suited up, not in the new prototype, not in the experimental armor laced with phantom pulse triggers. Just the Mark 82, classic, clean, all-purpose. He didn't want this to be a war, but he wasn't walking out unarmed. When he stepped onto the roof, Superman didn't speak right away. The city glowed behind him. The wind moved, but Clark didn't. Neither did Tony. Then, finally, Clark said it. "You built a weapon for me." Tony nodded. "I built a response. Because you stopped listening." Clark looked him dead in the eyes. "I never stopped listening. You just stopped trusting." That hit harder than Tony expected. For a moment, he almost stepped back, almost took off the helmet, almost said something to walk it all down. But he didn't, because beneath Superman's calm was pressure, like the air before a storm. "You set a trap," Clark continued, "in front of world leaders, during a summit of allies." "I set a boundary," Tony said, "because you're crossing them faster than anyone can react." "I'm not the threat here, Tony. You don't have to be. That's the point." Clark took a single step forward, not fast, not aggressive, just close enough. "You don't get to decide that." "And you do." Tony asked. "You fly into sovereign nations. You take weapons without approval. You attack based on instinct. Who elected you, Clark?" Clark's eyes narrowed. "I don't need permission to save lives." Tony's voice turned cold. "No, but you need accountability." There it was, the spark. In that moment, something shifted. Clark's jaw tightened. His pupils contracted. A pulse of heat shimmered behind his eyes. Tony saw it, the flicker. He activated a silent protocol, just in case. Then Clark stepped back. And for a second, Tony thought maybe, just maybe, they could de-escalate. Until the drone exploded. From nowhere, high above, a Stark recon drone burst into flames. Tony's HUD lit up. System breach. Unknown tech. Intrusion detected. Then 3 more exploded. Superman didn't move. But he looked. "You were tracking me," he said. "No," Tony said. "I was watching everything. You're not the only anomaly in the sky." Clark didn't care. "You weaponized my weakness. You weaponized the world's trust," Tony snapped. "Don't throw the first stone in a glass house." Then Clark moved. It wasn't an attack. Not really. Not a punch. Not heat vision. But the wind cracked. The concrete beneath his boots shattered as he launched toward Tony. Tony reacted in microseconds. Boosters flared. Repulsors glowed. A barrier snapped up just in time to catch the impact. And then it happened. The city saw it. The first strike. Superman shoved Iron Man through the roof like a missile. They hit the lab, glass and metal exploding outward. AI system shrieked as Tony flipped midair, deploying a concussive burst. It hit Clark square in the chest. No damage. Tony tried again, sonics, magnetics, electric charges. Superman kept walking, each step slower, more deliberate. He wasn't rushing. He was proving something. Tony launched a barrage of micromissiles, trying to scatter him, create space. Superman closed the distance. Faster than expected, but not full speed. He was still holding back. That's what terrified Tony the most. This wasn't rage. This was control. This was a lesson. Tony triggered the phantom pulse. Green flickered across the room. Superman stopped, breath hitched, hand to his chest. It worked. For exactly 4 seconds. Then Superman exhaled. His eyes blazed. And he said it. "You think I haven't trained for this?" Then he crushed the emitter. Tony's suit rebooted instantly, emergency mode. And then Superman hit him. Not a punch to kill. A punch to remind. Tony flew backward, armor cracking, HUD spinning. He caught himself mid-fall, rocket sputtering, pain radiating down his spine. But he got up. "Nice hit," he said, blood in his mouth. "Nice trap," Superman replied, chest rising. They paused, both breathing harder than before. Then Tony asked it, "Are we enemies now?" Clark didn't answer. He turned, looked out at the city, at the lights, at the people below, unaware, watching their shows, living their lives. "No," Superman said, "but we're not allies anymore either." Tony removed the helmet. "Then what are we?" Superman floated upward, just an inch off the ground. "I'm what comes after trust fails." And with a sonic boom, he vanished. Tony stood alone, suit damaged, rooftop broken, heart pounding. He hadn't won. But he hadn't lost either. He had drawn blood, not from Superman's body, but from his faith. The world wouldn't see it yet, but in that moment, something had cracked. Not a truce, not a war, something worse, an understanding. They were no longer on the same side, just on different paths leading to the same battlefield. The next day, the sky looked the same, but the world was different. Tony felt it in the silence of the tower. No media swarm, no press calls, no official statements. But the air had changed. The team felt it too. Everyone did. You don't fight a god in your own home without the world shifting under your feet. The rooftop was still cracked. Stark left it that way. A reminder. The footage never went public. Security lockdown ensured that. But rumors spread anyway. Whispers from Wakandan satellites, encrypted shield briefings, half-witnesses on nearby rooftops. Nothing clear, just tension rising everywhere. The question no one dared ask was now the only one on anyone's mind. If Iron Man and Superman fought, who won? No one answered, because there was no winner, only silence. Steve came to the lab that night, said nothing for 5 minutes, just stared at the screen showing Tony's suit diagnostics, half red, half yellow, damage and recovery. Finally, he spoke. You provoked him. Tony didn't look up, and he responded, you could have just talked. I did, for months. While he kept making moves no one else wanted to question. Steve crossed his arms. You made him your enemy. Tony turned, eyes sharp. No, he made himself untouchable. I just reminded him he's not. That was the real fracture. Not in the team, not in the tower, in the trust. Because now, even Captain America didn't know whose side to stand on. Half the world still worshipped Superman. The other half started to fear him. Quietly, carefully. But that fear was real and growing. In secret rooms, people built defenses. Nations called for surveillance. Underground labs lit up with projects they once swore they'd never create again. All because they saw the footage Stark didn't release. The part where Superman hesitated. That was all it took. For Tony, the battle never stopped. He spent the next week rewriting Protocol Eclipse into a global system, one that could trigger from anywhere at any time. Satellites, drones, even suits in deep storage. Redundant, decentralized. He didn't tell the team. He didn't ask permission, because this wasn't for them. It was for the moment after. The moment Superman stopped pulling punches. Clark, meanwhile, vanished. No public appearances, no press, no patrols. Not even Lois knew where he was. The world felt it. The absence, the weight. And some people started wondering if Iron Man had done the unthinkable, if he'd scared Superman off. Tony never confirmed anything. He just kept building. Then, 10 days later, Superman returned. Not with a speech, with an act. He flew into a war zone Eastern Europe, where 2 rogue states had been slaughtering each other for months, while the world looked away. He stopped the conflict in 6 minutes. No casualties, no blood, just power, precision, and control. The soldiers dropped their weapons, not from defeat, from awe. Superman didn't stay for applause. He left a single message, broadcast across secure networks worldwide. Power doesn't corrupt, fear does. Tony watched it alone, and for the first time, he wasn't sure he was the hero in this story anymore. Because Superman didn't attack, he didn't retaliate, he didn't expose the trap or leak the confrontation. He just proved his point, that maybe Stark was afraid, and maybe fear had finally driven him to prepare for a war that might never come unless he caused it. That night, Stark sat on the tower rooftop again. Wind cold, sky empty. No suit, no AI, just him and the quiet. Until the air shifted. A shadow moved across the moonlight, and Clark landed again. Not like a threat, like a warning. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Clark said, I understand now. Tony raised an eyebrow. What's that? Why you did it? Why you built the Pulse? Why you planned the summit? Tony waited. You didn't want to stop me, Clark said. You wanted to see if I'd make you. Tony didn't deny it. because he wasn't sure anymore if it was wrong or just necessary. Clark sat beside him, quiet, human. "I won't be your enemy, Tony. Not unless you force me." Tony sighed. "And I won't be your watchdog. Not unless you give me a reason." They looked at each other, for the first time, not as rivals, but as something worse. Checks. They weren't partners anymore. They weren't enemies yet. They were the balance. The line between control and chaos. Tony stood first. "Next time you step out of line, I won't hesitate." Clark nodded. "And next time you cross it, I won't hold back." They parted without a word. Two men, two gods in different armor, two futures waiting to collapse into one. The world didn't know what had changed, but it would, because now Earth's greatest protector had an equal, not in strength, but in resolve. And the next time the sky cracked, everyone would wonder who'd be flying toward it, and who'd be standing on the rooftop waiting to stop them.